to the Author to Authority podcast. This is the third episode from Podapalooza, and I have a hard time saying that name. But it's been an exciting journey so far. I love this concept of, getting paired with someone. Now, yes, obviously, we were allowed to choose who we wanted. So, Steve chose me, I chose him because we knew we'd be a good fit for, he'd be a good fit for the for you, the audience. And so I'm excited to have him on here today because he's going to be talking about thinking differently, speaking differently, and how you use that to sell more. Now, Steve has been performing on the live stage since the age of 6. And that's over 53 years ago. He's a fellow Canadian. I love interviewing fellow Canadians. He's an award-winning global speaker, and for over 30 years, he's been training and mentoring executives, thought leaders, and professional speakers from around the world to be able to deliver high-impact keynote speeches and make money from it at the same time. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Well, thanks so much, Kim. Glad to be here. Thanks for selecting me out of the group.
So, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get in? Like, obviously, you've been performing for a long time, but how did you get into training and mentoring people in speaking?
So I started playing music as a child at about 6 years old, and I started playing, on stages and on TV and that kind of thing. Then I joined a band, or formed a band in my teens, and we played around the country, and we were doing well. And it was fun and it was great, and it was everything it should be. And then one time I saw a video of Zig Ziglar, and I had never heard of him. I didn't even know that speaking was a thing. And I'm watching this guy, and I think he's got, no equipment. He's got no bandmates to worry about. He's not performing to a drunk audience. Like, he's got real people in the audience. And he's just showing up, opening his mouth, and then going away again. I want to do that. I want that job. So there was a big training organization that I had joined to teach me how to do that. And I stayed with that organization for a while, and I ended up becoming an instructor with them. But the problem is I didn't really believe in what they taught. I did it because I was part of their organization.
Yes.
And what happened was, one day, before I'd ever coached anybody, I was in the back of the classroom, and I was what's called a graduate assistant, which means I had done the program and now I'm in the back helping administratively. And the instructor came to me and he said, "Steve, would you like to try coaching somebody?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I had watched this instructor for a couple of years, and I had in my head all the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like. And when I watched him coach, I would say, "Oh, I would do it that way too." And sometimes I'd say, "I wouldn't have done it that way." So I had in my own head how I was going to do this. And so the student they put in front of me was the toughest one in the entire thing. It was a 13-week program. There's about week 6. And this guy didn't want to be there. His boss had sent him there. He never participated. He was just awful, and he got in front. And of course, I'm thinking, of course, I get the toughest one, right? I get the toughest one. And so he gets up there, and within about 3 minutes, I had that guy opened up like Tony Robbins on steroids. I mean, he started sharing, and he started crying, and he started laughing, and everything inside of him came out. And he never went back. He never reverted back. And so I call that a moment, because what happened to me in that moment is I said, I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm good at this. And so I left that organization, and I started my own, and I've been training coaches and speakers ever since. And it's a little bit different than, how to sell from the stage, although that does occur. But it's really about how do you take whatever's inside you, whatever's there, and how do you share it with an audience, whether it's virtual, whether it's live, or even if it's a prospect or a boardroom. How do you share that in a way that reaches past people's intellect and into their imagination and changes them at a visceral level? And so that's the gift that I have, and that's what I do.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You said you were on TV as a kid. Would I have known any of the shows you were on?
No, it was all local TV shows. In fact, the very first one that I was on, I was about 6 years old, And what had happened was I was at a Christmas party with my family, my mom and dad, and all my cousins, and we all played guitar. And of course, I was a very small, little skinny 6-year-old with, big thick glasses, and I could barely hold this guitar that I was playing, but I could play it quite well. And there was a lady next door who was the host of a local TV show on Rogers Cable. And she happened to be there, and she said, "I want that little boy on my show." And so we said, okay. So the next week, they took me down to the studio, and I got to play on the TV show. And here's this, skinny little guy with big glasses playing, really crazy guitar. And so from there, I did, some local things. And when we started the band, wherever we would tour into different parts of Canada, the local TV stations would interview us, that type of thing. No major shows, no big stardom. Although we did have a fan club with a limousine. That was cool.
Oh, I love it, Steve. It's just because, we're both from Ontario, right? So if it was even a semi, well-known show in Ontario, I might have seen you on it. So there you go.
I don't know. I'm not even sure that you're even remotely old enough to remember those days. I don't know.
Well, I'm a lot older than I look.
Is that right? No, they were just local TV shows. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I know that I want to let you loose here, because I know you have such tremendous value that you're going to be able to share with the audience. And, the audience is, because, we had a total of maybe 2 minutes to talk before you came on. So
at least
the audience that's listening right now is entrepreneurs, professionals, speakers, and coaches. So these are, from solopreneurs to small business owners, professionals like real estate agents, financial advisors, and of course, speakers and coaches. So what advice do you have for us today? And I'm going to let you loose to speak for a little bit.
Okay, cool. I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, right? So my mind is going to this. I meet so many coaches, speakers, consultants, authors, all the people we know. And they try so hard to differentiate themselves. They try hard to stand out by differentiating themselves, and they do it this way. They always talk about the same things. So for example, if we have a coach, let's say a business coach, and we line that business coach up on the wall with 15 other business coaches. And if I asked that one coach, I said, "Tell me why I should choose you," the answers that are going to come back almost always fall into one of these categories. Either they're going to say something about their experience. I've been in the business for 20 years. Or they're going to say something about their credentials. Well, I'm a certified this, or, I've been trained in that. Or they're going to say something about their story. Well, I have a unique story. I've been there and done that, and I've lived it myself. Or they're going to talk about their service. Well, I take my clients very seriously. And it's going to be something in there that they're going to use. And then if I go to the next coach and I say, "Tell me why I should choose you," they're going to use different words, but they're going to say exactly the same thing. They're going to use the same parameters. And so what I try and help coaches understand is that what you perceive to be a differentiator is not. It might be a sales feature, but it's not a differentiator, and it's making you look and sound exactly the same as everybody else. And so then the question is, well, what is a differentiator? And a differentiator is what I call this. It's being able to demonstrate your unique understanding of your prospects or your client's condition from a perspective they have never considered before. And let me give you a very simple example of this. Okay. I go, when I'm speaking all over, I'll ask the audience this question. I'll say, "Now put up your hand if you or somebody is in the market for a tennis instructor." Now, Kim, if I have an audience of 100 people, how many hands do you think go up?
Here in Canada in the middle of winter?
None, right? I mean, none. Every now and then I might get one. Okay. And so then what I'll do is, if there's, let's say 100 people as an example, I might say, there's 100 people here. I'm going to guess that at least 30 of you are either in the market for a tennis instructor right now, or somebody who is. And so Kim, let me ask you, are you in the market for a tennis instructor?
Nope.
Okay. So then, and I don't know if you're going to qualify for this or not, but let's see. I want to tell you about a guy named Brian. Brian came to me about 17 years ago, and he says, "Steve, I'm going to all the networking groups, the Chambers of Commerce and the BNIs and all of the groups." And he says, "I'm collecting all the cards and shaking all the hands and making all the phone calls and meeting all the people." And he says, "I'm just not getting the business that I need." I said, "Well, Brian, what do you do?" He says, "I'm a tennis instructor." So we taught Brian this fundamental principle, and that is that you don't actually have to be different from anybody else who does what you do. But you do have to appear to be different from everybody else who does what you do. And this is what we teach coaches, speakers, authors, consultants. You don't have to be able to be different from anybody else, but you need to be able to appear to be different. And so you appear to be different by changing the way you think about your market a little bit and changing the way you speak about yourself a little bit. So if you saw Brian today, you said, Brian, what do you do? He'd say, well, you know how sometimes kids have so much energy and they're bouncing off the walls and the parents have no idea what to do with these kids. You say, well, what I do is I take kids of any age, I bring them on a tennis court, and I absolutely exhaust them, and I hand them back to their parents. So let me ask you a question, Kim. Do you know somebody who might be in the market for a tennis instructor? And I asked the audience that question, and everybody's hand goes up. And so here's the point: is with that example, Brian was telling people he's a tennis instructor, and I have this kind of course, and I teach that kind of course, and this is what I do, and this is where I do it. And every single, it's not like there's a bunch of tennis instructors at all the BNIs and all the chambers of commerce, but people don't understand how it relates to their life. So when he changes the way he speaks and changes the way he thinks about his market a different way, he speaks about himself a different way, matches those two things together, and all of a sudden, he goes from "I'm not interested" to "tell me more."
Yeah.
Right.
It's results driven.
Well, yes, and it's results driven. And here's the thing: two things. Number one is it's results beyond what's expected. So the big challenge here is, as coaches and as consultants and even as speakers, what I believe we need to do is we need to understand like the first level of expectation of our clients, which is the known problem they have. People are going to go to a coach because they have a problem to solve. People are going to hire a speaker for their convention because they want a specific outcome. People are going to hire a consultant because they have a problem to solve. And that's fine. We need to know what those problems are. But more than that, we need to know the next level of problem that our client doesn't realize. And that is so with Brian, the tennis instructor, that people know that they're only going to hire a tennis instructor if they want to learn tennis. And like you said, really, in Canada, in winter? Well, in Canada, in winter is when we need the tennis instructors the most, because that's when the kids are in the house. And so we need to understand the next level of need with our market.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Mind blown. It's spinning. I'm thinking.
Oh, good.
You know what? One of the things that I love about being a podcast host is how much I learn in the process.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get that.
I work really hard to bring in, very high level experts like yourself. And when they share these types of things, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I got to write this down, because this is something I need to think about, and then how I apply it. So I want the audience just to stop for one very quick second, because what Steve said here is very powerful, not just as a speaker, not just even getting on stages, but even, he just gave you a massive nugget that's going to help you take your business to the next level. Because when you can differentiate, my book back there, Author to Authority, one of the things I talk about is differentiation. And, you don't go into a store and look in a bin of light bulbs and carefully pick through them to find one. You grab the top box, you say, okay, they're not broken, and you take them, right? It's the same in business. If you look like every other person who does what you do, guess what? If you're at the top of the bin that day, you'll get chosen. If not, you're going to sit in the bottom for a while.
100%. And what's so interesting about that is the more we try and differentiate ourselves using the same techniques as everybody else, the more we look the same. Mm-hmm. I've got a webinar that I do about how to stop trying to sell your books as an author. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, and it's really not about not selling your books. But what it's about is, how do you get your book to sell you? How do you get your book? When somebody buys a $20 book or $19 book on Amazon or whatever, How do you get it so that when they read that book, they say, I need to speak to this one. I need to talk to this one. I need to hire this one. And so, I love the nature of your podcast, from author to authority, because there are so many people, and this, Kim, there's so many experts who write books, and in those books is incredible wisdom. And then we often spend so much of our time and energy trying to sell our books. And it's not a bad thing to sell your books. Of course you want to sell your books, but that's the short money, that's the short impact, because people will buy your book and they can read what's in it, but they can only implement at a certain level. If we want to change lives, if we want to impact change, if we want to facilitate growth in the community and humanity, people need more than our books. And so our books need to sell us so that people can come to us and avail themselves of the greatness that we really can offer, so that we can facilitate the change that we were actually meant to change. The book is an amazing tool, and it does position us as an as an authority, and it can make some money, and it can affect people's lives. But I've always believed that a book is it's a limiter. Okay, so here's an example of limitations of our books that we write. And so it's like this: if you were flying from Toronto to Vancouver, how much comfort would you have knowing that the pilot had read the book? And that's pretty much the extent of the knowledge, as opposed to working with the proper coaches, trainers, teachers, to train them. And with us as coaches and experts and speakers and consultants and all the things that we do, I believe that we need to look at our work that way, especially our books, because our books are such a magnificent tool to draw people to us. And so, there's so many people who need to learn how to take their books to position them as an authority, but not to stop there, position them as an available authority, and teach people how to come to them. So the books need to sell us instead of us selling the books as much.
Yeah, as a publisher, those are the types of books that I create. And, one of the things that we do throughout the book is having those natural sounding call to actions, because you're right, you can't just write the book. You have to get the person to connect with you. That's the goal of the book, right? Is to provide the value, create the relationship, and then have that person connect with you to do more. So I fully agree. Now, Steve, I know we only have a couple of minutes left because of just the timing, but you are a best-selling author, or international best-selling author, apologize. Here's a question I ask every author that's been on the show. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly of publishing your first book?
Oh, I love this question. Very good question. Okay, here was the good. The good was that I got it done. And when I got it done, it felt amazing. It felt great. And I finally felt, okay, I have something real in this world now that I've contributed. That sense of pride.
The baby's born.
The baby is born. So that was the good. The bad, and I'm not going to call it bad, but here's the bad. The process of writing the book was a little bit brutal because I had a publisher who ended up being, how can I put this? Not exactly above board in life and in business. And so I had the book written. They played some underhanded games that was going to cost me a whole bunch of money to do a bunch of things that didn't need to be done. So I pulled the deal. I changed the book. I changed the title. I changed the cover. I changed the arrangement of the inside. I changed it a significant amount. And I went to my attorney, my lawyer. I said, has this been changed enough? And they said, yeah, you're safe. So I published the book. And what's interesting is the moment I published the book, the moment it came up on Amazon, I got a letter, an email from that publisher, a cease and desist. And in the letter, it said, I have a copy of your book. And so I went back and I said, how did you get a copy of my book? It's been on Amazon for 3 minutes and nobody's bought it yet. The copy you have is clearly pirated. So I'm going to countersue you for copyright infringement. So then there was this back and forth thing like this, and we finally dropped it. But that was I guess that's the ugly. I'm going to call that the ugly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the ugly. But we got it done and everything was fine, But I think here was the bad. And I think that there are a lot of publishers a lot of authors who get this bad. And that is when I published the book, I expected everybody was going to buy it. And what happened is they did. My mom bought it. My sisters bought it.
Yeah.
My clients bought it. My friends bought it. Right. And I thought, I got some great momentum here, and I'm already making plans, for the next, we're going down to Florida, and, I got big plans. And then of course, everything just stopped. And, it kind of was a reality hit for me that, okay, I've got the book. That's great. Now what? And so that's why I actually created a webinar called You're an Author. Now what? And it's
you didn't
about
have a marketing plan.
Right. And well, yes, first of all, I had no marketing plan. That's exactly right. And secondly, I just gave up. I mean, my expectations weren't met and they weren't unrealistic, and I didn't have a marketing plan. And so I gave up, and the book sat there, for a long time. And then I was able to revise it and revive it. And now I use it, regularly. But that letdown was, I think, the bad. So the good was getting her done. The baby's born. The bad was the expectations didn't meet themselves afterwards. And the ugly was going through all that process to get it done.
Yes. Yeah. I talk to my clients about, your book is not the field of dreams, where you build it and people just come.
Yeah.
That does not happen.
Who knew? Right? Who knew?
Oh, well, Steve, this has been such a wonderful conversation. How can people, do you have anything free to give away, or how can people connect with you?
Yeah, go to my website, steve@stevelowell.com. And the best thing that I can offer is go and look at that webinar. It's an evergreen webinar. It's there. You can just go and sign up, and it runs. It's like pre-recorded. And it's called You're an Author, Now What? And it goes through some of the things we talked about today. And it's about, stop selling your book as much as get your book to sell you. And it's not discouraging people from selling their books. It's from discouraging people from putting their heart and soul into selling their books and then being disappointed because they probably don't have a proper marketing plan, because most of us authors don't. And so it's that. So I think that's the best place to start. Go to steve@stevelowell.com, poke around in there, but you'll see there's a spot there for nonfiction authors, and just watch that webinar. It's about, 90 minutes or something, but there's good stuff in there, and there's some good material in there.
Thank you so much, Steve. What a pleasure it has been to meet you and interview you. So this has been Steve Lowell and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed this episode, share it out. Have a great day, everyone.